Good morning. Good morning, everyone. How the devil are you doing today? It's the show of the year that I dread the most for very obvious reasons. Obviously, we're here to remember Mick Collings, Ken Cresswell, Chris Huxtable, and John Shaw, who died at the Didcot A power station on this very day 9 years ago. Lots of stuff that I want to share with you. I want to throw this one up very, very quickly. Gary Muirhead. Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Mark. Good morning, guys. On this very day, the 9th anniversary of Didcot, the day we lost 4 brothers of our industry. Rest in peace, lads. Yeah, that's hopefully that will be the tone for today. Now, I realise there's a lot of frustration, a lot of anger out there over the length of time it has taken to investigate this incident. I know the police are now, Thames Valley Police are now saying that the investigation is entering its latter stages. I don't even know what that means. Does that mean we've got an answer in 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 years? I don't know. As I say, I realise there's a lot of frustration out there. I realise there's a lot of anger out there, but I would ask you, I guess, to save that. We've got 3 videos that I want to play you. I've done one of them, I'm in one of them, and there's another one as well. I think it's important to remember today that we're here basically to remember Mick, Ken, Chris, and John, and obviously to show our support and our solidarity with the families, their bereaved families. As I say, if you are angry and frustrated, welcome to the club. I am as well. Maybe we can all save a bit of that for the second part of the show or the second half, and just remember. Just remember why we're really here. Good morning to Matt Mowat. Morning, Matt. How you doing, mate? I've heard that off the police year after year. Yeah. The latter stages, as I say, I don't even know what the latter stages means. All I would say is, even if they were to phone me up now, which is highly unlikely because they basically don't speak to me, but if they phoned me up today and said, we have concluded the investigation and we are pressing ahead with the prosecution of someone, how long away is that? By the time you've got the various parties got their defence together and their prosecution together, year, 2 years, 3 years? I honestly don't know. So, morning, Matt. Good morning to Dan Cullen as well. Good morning to Chris Ford as well. So, as I say, I've recorded about an 8-minute video, kind of expressing my feelings on where we are today and everything else. But before we get to that, I want to give you, I want to play you the Didcot statement from the police. Matt has just said, we hear this every year, the fact that, we're entering the latter stages, believe it or disbelieve it as you will. But this is the statement. The photograph on the screen is going to be a guy called Ben Snuggs. He is the Deputy Chief Constable, who has kind of been pushed into the forefront of this, perhaps wrongly. There used to be a chief constable there, a guy called John Campbell, who has since retired, I think, and probably gone off to a nice, healthy retirement package and pension and everything else, who basically did nothing, didn't bring it to fruition. So I have question marks about that. Peter Hawkins is here. Morning, Peter. Good of you to join us. Gary says, let's hope and pray we don't get to 10 years and still no resolution. I have a horrible feeling we will. Mark Whiting is here as well. So let me play you this video because this brings us up to date as far as the police are concerned.
Today marks the 9th anniversary of the partial collapse at Didcot Power Station. Thames Valley Police and the Health and Safety Executive continue their joint investigation, led by the force, into the collapse. Deputy Chief Constable Ben Snuggs said, "We today pay tribute to the 4 men who lost their lives following the partial collapse at Didcot Power Station, and my thoughts remain with the families of Michael Collings, Ken Cresswell, Christopher Huxtable, and John Shaw, who lost their lives. Our dedicated joint investigation team continues to make meaningful progress in this highly complex case, which is actively investigating offenses of corporate manslaughter, gross negligence manslaughter, and Health and Safety at Work Act offenses. The scale of the investigation is almost unprecedented. To date, the investigation team has collated and analyzed over 6,500 exhibits, 90,000 images, and 230,000 digital media artifacts. Over 180 hours of video recorded witness and suspect interviews have been conducted, in addition to the 2,812 statements taken. The investigation team also continues to conduct further interviews, and while we cannot put a specific time frame on when the investigation will conclude, we are confident that we are moving towards the latter stages of our inquiries. Our officers continue to provide regular updates to the families on the investigation progress, as well as to the Crown Prosecution Service. We remain totally committed to investigating what happened at Didcot and providing the answers the families deserve. I want to thank them for their ongoing and unwavering support.
So that is the statement that was issued. I think it was issued on Thursday, obviously to coincide with today being the 9th anniversary. Lots and lots of stuff in there. And yes, they are ploughing through an awful lot of information, an awful lot of witness statements and interviews and everything else. I don't know how police investigations work, but you would have thought that they would be starting to piece together an understanding of exactly what's happened prior. If you're seeing the evidence that they are, surely by now they should have come to some kind of direction. I don't get the impression they have in any way, shape or form. Somebody's just popped up in the chat. Let's have a look, see who that is. Gary Muirhead says, the longer it goes on, you have to wonder, what are they trying to hide or cover up? If there's nothing to hide, then come on, let's bring this to an end and give the families closure. Yeah. And also, one of the things that I'm very, very mindful of with this one, and I'm hoping this isn't the case, but if they decide that Coleman and Company are in some way responsible, the Coleman and Company are a pretty big demolition company, but by comparison, not that big. So I would imagine, they could take it to court and get it resolved fairly quickly. If it turns out that the energy company, i.e. the client in this instance, was in any way responsible, bearing in mind the amount of money that energy companies have tucked down the back of the sofa, they could keep this in limbo for years yet. So yeah, there we are. Dan Cullen says, latter stages, this is diabolical. Yeah, 100%. It's the families that are suffering in prolonging of all this. Yeah, it is. It is. I know Tia Huxtable was planning to join us. I've not seen her yet, but maybe she's just lurking in the background. The other thing with Gary's point there, you have to wonder what they're trying to hide or cover up. And yes, I'm inclined to agree with that. But the other point as well, we talked about this on Friday on our breakfast show on Friday. What can you remember what you were doing 9 years ago? And also, are all of the people that have given witness statements, are they all still with us? Are they all still alive? Are they all still fully functioning? 9 years. If you were maybe in your 60s by the time when you were actually witnessed or gave a witness statement, you're now into your 70s. Are you still fully cognizant? Are you able to provide reliable witness statements? You've got to have a question mark. As I say, are all of the witnesses going to make it all the way to fruition on this? Certainly, there are members of the family that haven't. As I say, I'm not sure if Tia Huxtable's here, but she's lost her brother, Chris, in the accident itself, but then lost another brother before he was given any answers as well. So there we are. Anyway, look, I produced a film. I had to be off screen because, frankly, I kind of float between wanting to cry my eyes out and wanted to rage at the world and kick my computer screen in. So I did this without me on screen. Matt says something somewhere is so wrong about this horrendous accident investigation. I'll come back to my film in a moment. There is. I don't want that, and I actually say it in the film that I'm about to play. I don't necessarily want that to cloud matters. let's be absolutely honest. We've had 4 honest, hard-working men killed. That is the greatest travesty. That is the greatest injustice. Nobody should die while earning a crust for their family. That's the first bit. But then to drag their heels and protract this investigation, absolutely, as Matt said, horrendous. Nigel Brown, morning, Nigel. Words may be nice, but we all need to see action. It's far too long. Nigel, 100%. 100%. And we'll, as I say, we'll come to that after the film. As I say, this is about 9 minutes. It is purely audio. I couldn't think of a more appropriate way to do it. So this is 9 years. 9 years is a long time, a very long time. That's how long it takes for a baby to go from newborn to school child, for a teenager to go from childhood to adulthood. Think about it. In the past 9 years here in the UK, we've seen 6 prime ministers come and go, each of them as forgettable, regrettable, and inconsequential as the last. We bid farewell to the longest standing monarch in our history, and we cast ourselves adrift from our European neighbours. We endured a once-in-a-lifetime global pandemic. We enjoyed 2 World Cups and 3 Summer Olympics. In the US, they've seen 3 presidents come and go, although one of them has recently returned like a divisive orange boomerang. Personally, during that same 9-year period, I lost both my parents and my father-in-law. I had 3 near-death experiences, one from a burst appendix, one from sepsis, and another from my car being T-boned when I was driving to the JCB World Headquarters. I became a grandfather not once, not twice, but 3 times. 2 of my 4 children left the family home to start new lives of their own. I moved house twice, and my career took a sharp left turn when I left the familiar surroundings of print journalism to embrace daily live streaming and video production. 9 years, 108 months, 468 weeks, 3,288 days. So much has changed, and yet one thing remains the same. 9 years on, and we still don't know how or why 4 demolition workers went to work at the Didcot A power station and perished. Those 4 men walked onto that site that terrible day, and for them, their families, time stopped. Their futures were stolen. Over the course of 9 years, I've been orphaned, I've become a grandfather 3 times, and I very nearly died. What could Mick Collings, Ken Cresswell, Christopher Huxtable and John Shaw have experienced? What could they have accomplished? What could they have seen, heard, enjoyed, contributed or shared? What wisdom and experience could they have imparted? We'll never know. All of that was taken from them and from their loved ones in an instant. Their names are spoken now only in sorrow. Their memories kept alive by families still waiting for answers that may never come. Speaking of answers, obviously the main question is, how did these men die and why? It's only when we have answers to those 2 questions that the families might be allowed to move on, and the demolition industry can extract whatever lessons are required to ensure that we never go through this again. But there are many, many more questions than that. How did Theresa May, Amber Rudd, Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, Grant Shapps and James Cleverly keep their jobs as Home Secretary while allowing this investigation to fester? Why wasn't the Didcot disaster top of Yvette Cooper's priority list when she took over the role? How did Thames Valley Police Chief Constable John Campbell keep his job? Why has there been no public inquiry? Why has no one at the Health and Safety Executive been fired or forced to resign for their role in all of this? How have the police, the Health and Safety Executive, local MPs and various other officials allowed this investigation to be pushed further and further from the public consciousness. Why has the demolition industry not staged a public protest at the injustice that's been visited upon 4 of its number? Over the past 9 years, and with each passing anniversary, I've railed against the Thames Valley Police and the Health and Safety Executive and their combined failure to conduct a thorough investigation in a timely manner, to provide the demolition industry with some vital findings, and for failing to provide the families of those 4 men with some justice and possibly some closure. But not this year. This is not about them. It never has been. It's clear that they've failed those 4 men and that they've failed their families. So why should we talk about them on the day we remember those men and their families? But what I would say is this. Didcot has set a precedent. The investigating authorities have dragged their collective heels for almost a decade without explanation, without a public inquiry, and without anyone being held to account. This will now be the new normal. The investigation into the 4 deaths at Didcot has dragged on for 9 years. The investigation into the double death at Redcar has been drawn out for more than 5. As an industry and as a nation, we have allowed this to happen. The inaction of the investigating authorities is a national disgrace. Our lack of protest and outrage is to our eternal shame. Justice delayed is justice denied. And our collective silence makes us all complicit. With each passing day, the length of time taken to resolve the Didcot disaster heaps insult upon injury, rubs salt into an already festering wound. Even if the Didcot investigation resulted in real, positive and meaningful change, it's too late. That ship has sailed. The legacy of Didcot is the realisation that working men are viewed as expendable, that their bereaved families are barely worthy of consideration, that the investigating authorities have no real interest in delivering justice for those left behind. If we claim that our industry is safer, more professional, and that we take better care of our workers and their families than ever before, we're lying to ourselves. I was 51 years old when the Didcot disaster happened. In just a few days' time, I will turn 60. Didcot has cast a long, dark shadow over the demolition industry and across my career. But I am just an onlooker, a bystander. For me, that cloud is fleeting. It comes and it goes. Not far and not for long, but it goes. For the families of those 4 men that lost their lives that day, that shadow is ever present. It must be suffocating, its weight unbearable. For them, Didcot is not a coat they wear once a year. They are reminded constantly. Each anniversary of the incident, each Christmas, each birthday, each family gathering, each family holiday, each family dinner. All those conversations that have gone unspoken, all that laughter that never was. And all the while, the wheels of the demolition industry keep on turning. More new projects started, more money to be made, more working men and women exposed to known hazards and dangers in the pursuit of profit. How many more lives will be lost? How much longer must we wait for answers? 9 years is a long time. A very long time. Not really a great deal I can add to that. Let's have a look at the chat. What have we got? Gary Muirhead. I know that money shouldn't come into this, but you have to wonder how much money has this investigation cost. I would have liked to have the money to go to the families. Yeah. And listen, you know how this is going to pan out. You know, the Health and Safety Executive or somebody will make a prosecution. There'll be big fines, and they'll all pat each other on the back about a job well done. What about the families? Now, bearing in mind, I without trying to step on the toes of the woke these days, by and large, we are still in a nation where it is the working man that puts the food on the table. There's 4 families that lost that in an instant. How are they getting by? Are they getting by? If they are, I don't know how. And yet, all the while, you've got police officers claiming a wage and having progressed nothing. Health and safety executive claiming a wage, having progressed nothing. Dan Cullen says they're dragging their feet in this. Unbelievable. So many changes in the world, yet nothing done over this. Government should be held accountable as well for not pressurising HSE to get to the bottom of the disaster. Bearing in mind, and I've got the list here somewhere. Where is that list? Yeah. I mean, it's easy to point at the current government, and ultimately the buck stops with them. But bearing in mind, Theresa May was Home Secretary. So was Amber Rudd. So was Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, Grant Shapps, and James Cleverly. And not one of them pushed this along. Not one. And now Yvette Cooper as well. Not one of them pushed it along. Gary says no one should ever leave their loving home and families to never make it back. Rest in peace, lads. We will continue the fight on your behalf and make your voices heard for as long as it takes. Yeah, that is, I say it this time every year, that is my commitment. As it stands at the moment, as I said in that film, I turn 60 in a few days' time. No intention of retiring because I'm still enjoying what I'm doing. But even if I were considering it, there's no way I'm going anywhere until this one's resolved. Unlike a good many in this industry, sadly, I see it as a duty to see it through to the bitter end. Failure is paramount here in the HSE, government and police. Wonder, was there money involved to drag this out? I mean, I can't question that, but what I would say is, and I did say this on the TV the other day, although they cut it, obviously, from the moment that the boiler house partially collapsed and 4 men were killed, the primary concern among the police and the health and safety executive was a successful prosecution. It wasn't, the families weren't the priority. The industry were not the priority. It was a prosecution. So they can get their 15 minutes of fame having brought this to fruition after however many years. Gary, you and I both, I think that was 2 or 3 years ago this was said on this show. What is always stuck in my mind is what one of the families said. Didcot is our graveyard. Yeah. Didcot, I've said this before, I was going there every year on the anniversary to sort of pay my respects. But the last time I went, which was 2 years ago, possibly 3 years ago, so much has changed. Obviously, they were taking down the power station to make way for housing and that kind of thing. And the entire road layout has changed, which was confusing to me. It must be absolutely heartbreaking to the families. Where do they focus their grief? For quite a long time, in fact, several years after the incident in which the 4 men were killed, there was a bench right by the just an old wooden bench, and I'm sure during the period when Didcot was an active power station, I'm sure it was where people went and had a fag at lunchtime. But that bench became the memorial. There were teddy bears and cards and bunches of flowers that would, as I say, I used to go there on each anniversary, and every year there were fresh flowers there and new teddy bears and stuff like that. Well, that bench is now gone. Where do you focus your grief? Where do the families focus their grief? Dan says, so true, Gary. Here is that graveyard to those 4 men and their memories. Yeah, and the graveyard isn't even there anymore. Gary, thank you for that. Very well put together. Thank you very much indeed. The music, just so you know, don't go looking for it. That was Fred. Wrote it and created it. So thanks for that, Fred. Peter Hawkins, makes you wonder if we will ever get to say what we saw and know what was wrong. I'm at the point now where I'm not absolutely sure we will. I've always tried about this time of year to reassure the families that, we'll keep the fight going and we're with you all the way. Nine years without anybody in power calling for a conclusion. They could keep this one going for years. I mean, they already have, but they could keep it going for many, many more years. And then when you think, obviously Didcot it's the worst demolition accident, certainly in the UK, in living memory. But there've been others. We had 2 people killed. I was actually speaking to the widow of one of those accidents just last night. 2 guys killed up at Redcar. We've had other fatal accidents within the industry. And all of those now will be preceded, I guess, by Didcot. Anne Mackay has now been waiting for 5 years, 5.5 years, for some sort of resolution to an incident in which her husband, John, and his colleague, Tommy Williams, were killed. What hope does she have? If Didcot's taken 9 years, what hope does she have? Is she looking at another 4 years? 5? 10? Who knows? Matt Mowat says, at this rate, the police and HSE are apparently working through this investigation. Will it ever get resolved? I honestly don't know now. I'm not a religious person, but I pray that it is resolved. But without some kind of enforcement, without the Home Secretary or the Home Office demanding a resolution, in the nicest possible way and with the greatest respect, the Thames Valley Police have got away with this for 9 years now. They could quite easily get away with it for 10 or 11 or 12. Now we've had a message which I do think is no less than I would expect from the person that it comes from, but very, very important. So this is from Adrian McLean. Obviously, Adrian McLean is best known, I guess, as one of the leaders at Armac Demolition or Armac Group. But Adrian McLean, as of a month or 2 ago, he's now the incumbent president of the Institute of Demolition Engineers. And he says, in my capacity as president of the Institute of Demolition Engineers, I will be writing to the HSE, Chief Constable of Thames Valley Police, and the local MP to urge them to bring closure to the families of Mick, Ken, Chris and John so they may rest in peace and give some comfort to them. Thank you for that, Adrian. Why it has taken this long? As I say, I mean, Adrian McLean's only been in this position. I'm not aiming this at Adrian. Far from it. The absolute opposite is true. But in the period of 2016 to 2025, I would hazard a guess that the National Federation of Demolition Contractors will have had 6 presidents. The Institute of Demolition Engineers will have probably had 4, possibly 5. And it takes one of the industry's gentlemen to take on the top job to actually try to progress things. So, Adrian, thanks for that. If there's anything I can do to help you with that letter, to share it, to heap pressure on, I will certainly do that. That's what you get when you get a proper person at the top of an organisation. Matt Mowat says, no, we've done that one. Mike Nistaranu, sorry if I've just butchered your surname. Excuse my ignorance, but can a petition be launched then forwarded to the government? So it's a funny one, that. We did start a petition calling for a public inquiry. And listen, I'll put my hand up. There you are. I will accept the blame for this. I put the petition up. It was something we discussed on our daily show, and I put the petition up without consulting with the families, which, with hindsight, was a stupid and very ignorant thing to do. And we started to get some traction on it. Thames Valley Police were certainly aware. Health and Safety Executive were also aware of the strength of feeling. But one of the family members asked for the petition to be taken down. I think partly because they hadn't been consulted, but I think also trying not to rattle the cage of the HSE and the Thames Valley Police. They've taken 9 years working with the families. If they're seen to be working against the families, could they drag their heels anymore? So I fully understand that. So we have done the petition, but as I say, it was taken down out of complete respect for the families. And as I say, I take full responsibility for that. Gary Muirhead, we need this resolved now, not only for the families, but for the industry, so we can learn from the failings in the building or methods, so we can prevent this ever happening again. I'll go back to Adrian McLean. On Friday this week, I will be up in Leeds, along with the great and the good of the demolition industry, or the UK demolition industry, for an IDE, the IDE Spring Seminar, obviously hosted by Mr. McLean and the rest of the IDE. By now, the IDE should have been able to host a seminar, possibly more than one, to offer an explanation of exactly what happened to Didcot, so that those in attendance and those around the world that watch what the IDE are doing, obviously they now have an international membership as well, those that are seeking guidance, around the world, who are involved in taking down power stations and boiler houses, that should have happened by now. And the only reason it happened, it hasn't happened rather, is not down to the IDE, it's not down to Adrian McLean, it's down to the fact that we don't actually have the full answers, and B, we can't be seen to prejudice a court case. So as it stands at the moment, I'm speaking for him, but I'm sure he'll share this view. I'm sure there is nothing that Adrian McLean would like more than to give over the floor of an IDE seminar to the findings of the Didcot report, now concluded and everything else. But he can't. And he's in power for 2 years. Can I say hand on heart that it will be resolved during his presidency? No, I can't. Gary says, thank you, Adrian. I take my hat off to you, my friend. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, in fact, there's two of those. Dan Collins says, thank you, Adrian. That's the big question. Why so long? Yeah. Nigel Brown says, why do we have the NFDC? Waste of time for me. Lots of people in suits partying all the time. And listen, I say this every time I mention the NFDC. I do have my own personal beliefs on the health and safety on the NFDC, and I don't think they do themselves any great justice when it comes to serving their members, and certainly serving those that work for their members. But as I say, I can't. I used to be able to do these like I could do World Cup winners down the years. I can't actually remember. I know we've got John Lynch now. I think it was William Crooks before that, and so we've had, and bearing in mind there was a bit of a bun fight. We had Holly Price as president for a while, Paul Brown, but didn't see her through the full turn. David Keane came along, and so we've had all of these presidents, and not one of them have done a damn thing. And in actual fact, they will quite happily sit down with the health and safety executive, and rather than beating them with a big stick and demanding answers on Didcot, they're just happy to break bread with them, which I find so frustrating. I'm going to play you one final piece because it does illustrate what I think is one of my biggest concerns with this whole matter. Is it strikes me that this has been clouded by cowardice of people, be it Home Secretaries, individual politicians, MPs at local level, so at Didcot, but also down in Wales, where a couple of the guys came from, up in Rotherham, where a couple of the guys came from. I think there has just been a wide, almost universal cowardice. And there is a new MP up at Didcot. He's a Lib Dem MP. And he and I, separately, but he and I were on a TV news show on Friday last week. Compare and contrast, and listen, this is not to big me up, this is more to put him down. Bearing in mind, he's a new politician. He has the right to stand up in the Houses of Parliament and wag his finger at Keir Starmer and tell him to pull his bloody finger out. Instead, he does what you're about to see. Here's that video.
Good afternoon, I'm David Allard. Thames Valley Police says it's in the latter stages of completing a highly complex investigation into what caused the Didcot power station collapse 9 years ago. 4 demolition workers were killed when the plant's boiler house partly came down in February 2016. Nearly a decade on, and the families of the victims are still waiting for answers, prompting one industry expert to criticise the length of time it's taken as a national disgrace. Our reporter Catherine DeCosta is live for us in our Oxford newsroom. And Catherine, just remind us of what happened there.
Yes, the disused coal-fired power station was being prepared for demolition when it partially collapsed on the 23rd of February 2016. 4 workers were killed. They were Ken Cresswell, John Shaw, Michael Collins and Christopher Huxtable. But it took more than 6 months to retrieve their bodies, causing huge distress to the men's families. Thames Valley Police and the Health and Safety Executive have been conducting a joint investigation into manslaughter and health and safety offences ever since. But 9 years on, the families are still waiting for answers, and those in the demolition industry are highly critical of the length of time it's taking.
9 years to investigate the Didcot disaster is nothing short of a national disgrace. But unfortunately, it's not without precedent. You know, the investigation into Hillsborough, the investigation into Grenfell, this is becoming the norm. And unfortunately, I've got a horrible feeling that Didcot now for industrial accidents will set a precedent. You know, there's been no pressure from the Home Office or the Home Secretary to make the police at Thames Valley to pull their finger out and get the thing resolved any quicker. So as a result, they've dragged their heels, and I think other police forces and other investigating authorities will do likewise in the future.
Well, the Home Office declined to comment while an investigation's underway. The Thames Valley Force said in a statement that the scale of its investigation is almost unprecedented. To give you an idea, the officers have analysed over 6,500 exhibits, 90,000 images and conducted over 180 hours of recorded interviews. Now, they've not given a time frame for when it'll conclude, but they say they're confident they're moving towards the latter stages of their inquiries. Well, the MP for Didcot and Wantage says it's important to get on with the job.
Well, it's very frustrating for everybody involved, and of course, most tragically for the families of people who lost their lives. We do need the police and the Health and Safety Executive to conclude their investigation so that we can learn the lessons and you know get justice if that's what they deem appropriate. But they do need time to conclude it, and they are best placed to understand what those processes and timescales are.
For the families, the wait for justice continues.
Catherine DeCosta in Oxford, thank you.
So there's me being all uptight and angry, and there's your new MP. Yeah, they need time. Isn't 9 years time? Haven't they had plenty of that? And it is, I can't think of another way to put it. It is cowardly. And, you know, the actions up to this point of the NFDC, cowardly. They don't want to be seen to be criticising, A, one of their own members, and B, the investigating authorities. Cowardly. This is an organisation that claims to be the voice of the demolition industry, but when the industry needs it, that voice is utterly silent. Gary Muirhead says, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it Dr. Terry Quilby that was asked to help and he refused? Yes, he was. He was approached very, very early on. And it's on the public record. You saw it here, well, not on this show, but on another show, and he actually said that he declined because he didn't believe that Thames Valley Police and the Health and Safety Executive were capable of conducting an investigation of this nature. And I said this to Catherine DaCosta on the BBC there. I actually said, again, lots of my best stuff ends up on the cutting room floor, unfortunately, because the media are only paying attention in as much as they want a soundbite for it. But one of the things that I said to her was the demolition industry. There are a few people in the demolition industry that I respect more than Adrian McLean or John Woodward or Mike Keogh or any of these people. And Terry Cornby, I have the utmost respect for them. Would they be capable of investigating police corruption? No, of course they wouldn't, because they're fucking demolition men. So are the police capable of investigating a demolition accident? Dan says, NFTC are a money-making scam, charging companies a fee, and as Nigel says, parting, do absolutely nothing for the integrity of the industry. That is one of the things that I find hardest to swallow. It is the integrity of the industry. Didcot, the CMA investigation, the flurry of scaffold collapses back in whenever it was, 2019, 2020, whatever it was, nothing. At a time when you should be standing up and either supporting or defending the industry, they've done nothing. Nothing at all. Gary says there seems to be more coverage on Didcot this year, more than previous years. Let's hope we're coming to a conclusion soon. It's been a strange one with the media, actually, and I wonder if the fact that they've all got the hots for demolition again as a result of Grenfell now. But I've watched it over the course of the last 9 years. There was huge media interest on the day after it happened. The first anniversary, there was quite a bit, and then there was a bit less, and a bit less, and a bit less, and a bit less. And then this year, it seems to have gone back up again. As I say, I don't know whether that's because Grenfell has put demolition back in to the media consciousness, or whether it's the fact that even the media can't believe that it's 9 years with nothing, with no result whatsoever. Don't make me laugh. Unprecedented, unbelievable comment from the police. Yeah. As I say, my greatest concern with this, beyond the harm that this has done to those four families, is quite simply the precedent that it sets. On the day I went up there, the day after, so 24th of February 2016, I was up there, and it was just purely coincidental. The Health and Safety Executive, 4 or 5 weeks prior to Didcot happening, had issued a statement that basically said it was taking them 4 years to investigate and conclude and sometimes prosecute a fatal accident. So I went up there basically with that information tucked in one of the dark corners of my brain. And one of the guys from Sky TV said, how long is this likely to take? I said, well, the Health and Safety Executive have recently said that fatal accident investigations are taking roughly 4 years. Well, I then predicted that we'd have this all resolved by 2020. Well, 2020 came and went. We're now 2025. That's come and gone as well. So the 9th anniversary. So what is the HSE average now? What is the expectation now? If it was 4 years in 2016, is it 9 years now? So if somebody, God forbid, but if somebody goes to work on a demolition site in the UK tomorrow and is killed, are we now going to tell their families, we'll get back to you in 2034? Is that what we're saying? Gary says, what have you got to do to be removed or struck off by the NFTC? It seems to be keep paying your money and you can get away with murder. Shocking. There are mechanisms within the NFTC for you to be for your membership not to be revoked, but for it to be kind of paused. So if you have a fatal accident on one of your sites And even if a prosecution proves beyond any doubt that you were responsible for that, that system will not be invoked. You will retain your membership. So long as you keep paying your fees, keep doing your site audits, you will retain that membership. If you are found guilty of fraud or corruption or collusion or bid rigging, you will again retain your NFDC membership. If, however, one of their site audit team visits your site and your paperwork is incorrect, or if you can't give them in a timely manner a site to be audited, you can have your membership revoked. So you can be corrupt and you can kill people, that's fine. But what you daren't do is have paperwork that's squiffy. Make of that what you will. Dan says they are, in my opinion, a fraudulent organisation charging to be a member, so you get invited to the next party and don't do anything to help the industry. I'd love. I cut ties. Well, no, let's be absolutely honest. They cut ties with me first, and then I cut ties with them. I take very, very little notice of anything they do, mainly because I don't believe they do anything. I try very, very hard. I really do, because I do think that the industry does require representation. I don't believe that what the NFDC does is that representation that I would like to see, certainly. But when I think back, I can think back to David Clark. David Clark was the president of the NFDC in 2006. That's completely off the top of my head. I don't know, but he was. One of his things was, we are going to introduce a site audit scheme, so all of our members will be audited. So we not only can we claim we are the elite, but we're actually checking our members to ensure they're the elite. So David Clark put his head above the parapet. Wasn't popular. Jesus, it wasn't popular. But he put his head above the parapet and said, that's the way we're headed. John Ring was the next president, and John kind of calmed the waters to a degree. And then the next president was Dave Darcy, who took David Clark's idea and basically said, well, not only are we going to have a site audit scheme, but we are now going to make it a fundamental prerequisite of being a member. So if you want to be in this federation, you will be audited once or twice a year. If you apply for membership, you'll be audited before you join. So as I say, these big decisions, not industry changing by any means, because it was only applied to the actual NFDC membership. But here's a president, David Clark, we are going to make this industry better. Here's another one, David Darcy, we're going to make it even better still. After that, I am absolutely 100% struggling to think of anything that happened to move the needle. They did publish some guidance notes. I know, because I helped write a couple of them. One on high-reach demolition, one on the use of crushers. I know they've done one. I caught the tail end of the top-down one as well. So they've done that. But in the last 10 years, I honestly, and this is not a veiled stab, I genuinely cannot think of one thing that anyone in the NFDC, any president, any working party, any committee has actually done that has moved the needle on the industry. Nothing at all. Is the NFDC fit for purpose? I think the answer to that, Gary, is it kind of depends what the purpose is. If the purpose is to be a representative of the demolition industry, the UK demolition industry, both to government and to other demolition federations around the world, no, it is not. It is 100% not. It is failing in that. If its purpose is to lobby government, no, it's not fit for that. If its purpose is to make the industry better, safer, better perceived among the public, it is failing in that. If its purpose is to be the spokesman of the industry, it is failing in that. If, however, you decide that the actual purpose of the NFDC today is to hold some meetings, have an occasional ball or dinner or luncheon or whatever it might be, raise a few quid, raise a few profiles, yeah, it's 100% successful. Can't fault it at all. Is that what people sign up for, though? Are people signing up to be a member of an association that holds the industry to the highest possible standards and that lobbies on their behalf? Or are they signing up to hand over some cash to attend a few functions over the course of a year? With all the demolition sites I've been on with the NFDC on the gate, I've never seen them visit sites or hear anything positive for the organisation. I did find this quite surprising. I did their PR for whatever it was, 8-9 years. And it's one of those things, when you're inside, you kind of see it from within the bubble, and it's, oh, well, this is all fantastic. Everybody's working towards the greater good and everything else. When you get outside, you think, there's some really good demolition companies out there that aren't NFDC members. There are also some NFDC members who, frankly, shouldn't be in demolition at all. And it's only when you're given that opportunity to step back and go back to the site audit scheme. You know, I think at heart, you know, the thing that David Clark came up with friends and colleagues, and the thing that Dave Darcy enforced as a prerequisite, I think at heart is a very good idea. Very good idea. If you want to claim that you're the elite of the industry, prove it. Once or twice or sometimes 4 times a year, prove it. Prove it. Have somebody, an independent third party, come out and audit your site. But you know when they're coming. You actually know when they're coming. So they're you know, they may as well just roll out the red carpet. If you've got two, listen, I mean, this office that you're looking at the moment is a sty. I've got stuff on the floor, stuff on a cupboard over here, absolute pigsty. If somebody was coming to audit this in 2 weeks' time, by the time they got here, this would look pristine. Shocker. Gary says, in my opinion, I think a lot of demolition contractors only use the NFDC membership for a badge or the logo to have on their letterhead or site holding. Yeah, I mean, it's even to the point, I mean, there was a lot of talk for a while that the NFDC would get you on more tender lists. I don't believe that's the case anymore. If anything, post CMA, I think it might actually preclude you from some tender lists as well. I'm very conscious, you know, we're almost at the hour mark, and I don't want to go much beyond that because I am taking up your Sunday. But I'm very conscious that we, or rather I'm sat here with the controls. I'm driving this ship, but we have kind of done that thing that we often do. We've kind of veered off. Let's not forget, just very quickly, let's not forget, this isn't about the NFDC. This isn't about Yvette Cooper or Theresa May, Amber Rudd, Sajid Javid, Priti Patel, Suella Braverman, Grant Shapps, James Cleverly. It's not about Chief Constable John Campbell from Thames Valley Police. This is about the families of those 4 men. And the 4 men themselves. You know, Mick Collings, Ken Cresswell, Chris Huxtable, John Shaw. That's what this is all about. And something occurred to me. I was stood there just before I came on air, making myself a cup of tea, which has now gone cold, by the way. We like to tell ourselves in this industry, and I'm saying this industry, I'm saying it as demolition, but I also mean in construction. We tell ourselves that we are a brotherhood, that we are supportive, that we are ultimately, we've got each other's backs and we are there for one another. The hardest lesson to learn, I think, from Didcot is that that's not actually the case. The guys that were there on the day that saw the accident happened, you know, I've had reports of people sort of scrabbling through deadly, you know, absolutely deadly fallen steel to try to get their demolition brothers out, and were prevented from doing so, probably rightly, in truth, probably rightly. You know, that would have just made things a whole lot worse if somebody had been hurt or possibly killed trying to help those that had already been buried under all that steel. But from that point on, have we had their back? You know, I pitch up once a year and I spout forth here and I spout forth on the TV and on the radio and in newspapers. Think about those guys, you know, Mick, Ken, Chris and John. You know, they probably used to go home to their families and tell their families about the great guys they worked with, the crack they'd had that day, about how, you know, they were all part of a team and they were all part of a crew and a gang, and they were all mates together and they all had each other's back and they were there for each other. And then when those families really needed us all the most, we weren't there. Still not. As I say, I mean, I enormous admiration for Adrian McLean, and I mean, I don't actually know the deal with this, but you know, is everyone within the IDE happy that he's going to write to the Thames Valley Police and the Health and Safety Executive? I don't know. Will those in the NFDC be happy that he's doing that? I don't know. But it's taken 9 years for somebody to stand up, and somebody in some authority, and somebody with, you know, never lose sight of the fact that I'm just a keyboard jockey. That's all I am, just a journalist. I'm not a demolition person. I'm not the industry's spokesperson, although that's a mantle that I'm often given. I'm not. I'm just a Burke with a hat and a keyboard. That's all I am. It takes somebody like an Adrian McLean to actually stand up and put his head above the parapet, possibly to be shot at by others. So I wish him every success. And what do we got here? Very true, Mark. Some of these companies shouldn't even be involved in this industry. Yeah. And, you know, as I say, I'm not going to get caught up in the whole NFDC thing. But would you not have thought, I mean, the CMA was one thing, but an accident, would you not have thought that a good idea, if there is a fatal accident on a member's site, suspend their membership while the investigation is ongoing? Show the wider world, show the wider industry, we take this so seriously. We're not saying they're guilty. We're not saying they're innocent. We're not saying anything at all. But while that investigation is going on, we're going to take a step back and we're going to temporarily suspend their membership. The NFDC have done nothing for the memory of these four men that died in their industry. It's a disgrace. Not stood up for them or pushed this forward. Not a bloody word for them. I don't know. I mean, let me have a quick look. I'm just looking at their website right now. Bear with me a sec. Yeah, it is. It is the 9th anniversary of the worst demolition industry accident in living history. The national, bearing in mind the company that was doing the demolition at the time was an NFDC member. I am sat here right now, and I can show it to you just to prove that I'm not making this up or being a dick. There we are. That is how the NFDC website looks today. The only news is about the fact that their CEO, Duncan Riddell, is stepping down as CEO. And to be perfectly honest with you, the only reason that they are running that is because I revealed the fact that he was stepping down half a day before they did. So no commemoration of today whatsoever. They should be embarrassed. They should be ashamed. Absolutely ashamed. Nothing. Gary said, yeah, it's a wonder the NFDC didn't just copy and paste last year's statement. Yeah. And I don't know. how can you claim? Do they still say that? I don't actually know. Bear with me a sec. I'm just going to have a quick look. I can't actually see reference to that anymore. They used to describe themselves as the voice of the demolition industry. I'm not seeing that now. Maybe they've decided we don't want to be that anymore. But yeah, it's you would have thought, it wouldn't be hard. It wouldn't be beyond the wit of man for somebody to create a statement, from the incumbent president. On this day we honour Mick and Ken and Chris and John, and our hearts go out to the families, and we will be working alongside the health and safety executive to spread the word once the findings are revealed, and then just on the anniversary, just repost it. On the anniversary, repost it. Just change the name at the bottom. John Lynch now, probably Adrian Corrigan in a few months' time, maybe. But no, nothing at all. That is an hour. And I'm not going to have the final word on this one. I'm going to let Gary do it. I'll do that in a sec. As you all know, my father-in-law passed away a couple of weeks ago. And I've been asked, honoured to do it, but I've been asked to do the eulogy for him. And despite the fact that I sit here hour and a half each day just spewing words, I'm finding that one really hard. Gary, I think, has summed up precisely the words for today. Dan, I'm just going to do this one very quickly. News on their own, nothing whatsoever to the men, not an acknowledgement to the family. Sickening and disgusting. They don't give two monkeys. No, they don't. So, people, look, I'm going to love you and leave you because you do. Bearing in mind all that we've said today, and the fact that there are 4 families out there, I'd like you to go spend your Sunday. Go spend your Sundays with those family members, because you never know when you might be doing that for the last time. So I'm going to leave you with this note from Gary Muirhead, and thank you for this, Gary, because I think you've pretty much hit the nail on the head. An hour-long show, but we could have done it all with just this. Rest in peace, Ken, John, Michael, Chris. Sleep tight, lads. Guys got me in the feels. Wow. Wayne Bagnall. Mark, I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you for your efforts. It's very sad. Unfortunately, in my experience, and listen, there are very few people in the UK demolition industry as experienced as Wayne Bagnall, which is why he's got an MBE, frankly. In my experience, the first casualty of any accident is the truth. Wow. Bearing in mind, on Friday of this week, on Thursday of this week, I was approached by the BBC, who had got wind of an accident at Cotton Power Station, and couldn't get an answer out of the demolition company involved, couldn't get an answer out of the power company who owned the site, couldn't get an answer. They ended up phoning me to find out what I knew. I'd heard a whisper, but I didn't have any great details. So the only way that they could find what had actually gone on was to speak to the local ambulance service. And the ambulance service confirmed that there had, in fact, been an accident. So the long and the short of it all is, there is still, 9 years after Didcot, there is still that belief that you can tuck accidents away from prying eyes. As Wayne has rightly said there, the first casualty of any accident is the truth. Thanks for that, Wayne. Thanks for being here as well. Hope to see you on Friday. I'm going to put this up on the screen because I do think it sums up precisely why we're all here. Thanks for that, Gary. Rest in peace, Ken, John, Mick and Chris. Sleep tight, lads. I'll be back tomorrow with the proper show. more upbeat, obviously. Until then, everybody, really have a good day, and go and spend some time with your families, because those 4 guys can't. Thanks for watching.